Hey everybody, it's Ken McElroy here. I've got my good friend here, Todd Davis. And for those of you guys who don't know, Todd Davis started LifeLock. And we're going to talk to him a little bit about how, because Todd started the identity theft industry. Actually, there wasn't one. It didn't exist. And then he sold the company for over $2 billion recently. So we're going to talk to Todd right now. Hey, Todd.
Hey, Kenny Mac.
How are you, buddy?
Better than I deserve.
Good.
Promise you.
Hey, thank you for showing up today. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk to some entrepreneurs. Obviously, I know there's a lot you did, and there's a lot we could talk about today. But what we're trying to do for this talk is kind of go back to somebody who's starting in the first few years, and how hard that is. And I know people don't appreciate or realize. You actually sought out Michael Dell. You actually worked for him. You emulated him. There's a lot that kind of went into your journey. But let's talk about, how do you prioritize things, in your day and what made sense to you each day, and how did you decide what to do?
Well, as you know, Kenny, it's a kind of maturation, evolution. When you're first starting the company, what matters is survival every day. So you have to wear all the hats. You recruit friends and family because they're the only ones that will believe in you enough and not get paid when you're first getting started, all those kind of things. So the priorities then were, what do I got to do to keep the lights on, pay the bills, keep this dream that we have alive? But what I really learned along the way was then you have to evolve. If you stay in the minutia, if you're the one that is grinding every day and you don't get any sleep and you're not willing to go delegate things because you don't think someone will do it your way, you're destined to fail.
Right.
Can't scale.
Right. So this is a good point, because I think a lot of people get stuck here, especially if they buy a franchise or they start something and they're doing everything themselves. So how do you go from, because this is actually where a lot of people hang out. They say, I need to do everything. I need to do sales. I need to do marketing. I need to do,
Their comfort zone, right, is I'm busy.
Right.
So I'm kicking up a lot of dust. So I must be really being effective. Well, that's not the answer. So the real challenge, you got to do some self-reflection, is define what I call decisive points. So when you think about your mission, whatever that is, the goal of your franchise, the goal of your business you're building, in the role you're in, whatever that is, what are the decisive points? And what I mean by that, I don't mean stretch goals. Of course, we have those and things we want to accomplish. But a decisive point says, if I fail at this, if this doesn't happen, it could be catastrophic to the mission. Whatever my mission is, it could be catastrophic. And so there's a big difference between I'm trying to achieve a sales goal, I'm trying to hit a revenue number, I'm trying to expand to X, versus a decisive point that has to happen to make this successful. And now, as the leader of the organization, whatever that looks like, you have to spend the majority of your time moving the ball on a decisive point. Every day, even if it's an inch, move the ball on that decisive point. And then when you get, immersed and you're just, everybody's coming at every angle, I need you, make a decision, I need you to do this, it's a lot easier to start figuring out what to delegate. It's a lot easier to say, hey, I'm going to turn that over to you, Kenny Mac. I trust you. You decide, even if you don't do it the way I would do it. That has to happen, so I'm going to put a trusted person on it, and I'll live with the outcome, because it's not a decisive point.
So what are some decisive points in your journey as you, because you created the identity theft industry from nothing. I always tell people, if you can solve a market need, which is what you did essentially, there was a need there, just nobody saw it, but you. How do you take that thought and then create it, make it into decisive points?
So again, after kind of the first phase of we got to figure out who we're going to be, what's our identity going to be, for that we had to just go educate people. So I knew a decisive point. There were going to be kind of 2 or 3 along the way. In the beginning, the decisive point was I had to educate people. I had to make you realize there was something you could do, you could take action. So we'd go out and talk about number one consumer complaint in America. You can do something. Now, I was very blessed. We caught lightning in a bottle. People remember me as the crazy guy that gave out his social security number.
Yeah, by the way, that worked out.
It worked out well. But when we did it, right, it became a decisive point because we built a brand around that. We we heightened consumer consciousness about the problem. Well, that's a decisive point. Had we not done that, you're kind of beating your head in the wall, right, with your marketing message because no one hears it. I'm not aware of it. I don't know I should do anything. I didn't even know I could do something. So we had to break through that. Second, we did have to build that brand. And so, by the way, we spent over the years, over a decade, about $1 billion to create that brand. And so took chances on sponsorships and Celebrity Apprentice and all these different crazy, and some worked and some didn't, but the decisive point was build the brand, right? And then the final piece was you got to fulfill the, kind of brand promise. So if we said we're going to be the best at it, we had to innovate, we had to go acquire other companies, we had to evolve the product offering and deliver just world-class customer service. So there were little things along the way. You could, maybe that feature matters, maybe it doesn't. The decisive point was that we delivered on that brand promise that we made when people thought about they're the industry leader, I'm safe with them, even if something happens. And so by doing all that, we could weather all the other noise and competition and market changes. And I had to fight with federal regulators and all these kind of things. We weathered all that. You would have never even known it in our financials. You wouldn't have known it in my stress level, but you would have never known it in the financials. We just grew right through it because we hit the decisive points.
So I remember when you went on and had your Social Security number and your card and all that. And to me, that was when the brand awareness kind of first emerged. But you had, for you, that was just one step of many steps. So I don't think, for me, that was when I first became aware of LifeLock, was when you were basically in the Wall Street Journal with your credit card or your Social Security card and said, you can't hack me or something like that. But you actually had a whole team of stuff around that after that, right? Was that a big, it seemed to me that was when the lights kind of flipped on for you.
Well, it was both, right, Kenny? So as we all know, when we're trying to market our business, whatever it is, you have to break through the clutter. So I mentioned consumer consciousness before. Look, the best example I can give for people who are new entrepreneurs or not deem themselves marketing experts, here's the little secret. So consumer consciousness is the critical thing that you have to tap into. And so let me give you the example, the simplest way for me to explain consumer consciousness. So if you are not in the market to buy a car right now, you don't know it, but you are bombarded by car ads every day. Radio, television, print, billboard, they are everywhere. But you don't notice they roll right off you because your antenna, your consciousness isn't up for that. Now, the second you start to say, I may buy a car, and you figure out, hey, I'm kind of interested. Do I want a Ford or do I want a Tesla? Well, Tesla doesn't really have to advertise, but pick Mercedes. I want a Ford truck, whatever. I'm now watching those Ford and Chevy. My consciousness is becoming heightened. But the best example of consumer consciousness, right after you buy your car, isn't it amazing how many other people bought the exact same car you did? Yeah. Well, guess what? You were driving by those same cars yesterday before you had yours and didn't notice it. That is the perfect example. So when you're trying to build your business or your brand, remember, if their antenna isn't up, it's falling right deaf ears, right? That's why it's hard to go find good marketing campaigns, because I got to do something to shake you loose. So you're right. We built a whole campaign around consumer consciousness, but and the heightened level that we got because of Social Security. But it actually took from, you mentioned Michael Dell. I really just took what I learned from him. He was the first to market with guarantees in the PC industry. So I'm like, ooh, that worked out well. I'll copy that. I was the first to market with guarantees. Well, then that was followed up by, I'm so confident. Now, ironically, you said, I challenge people to steal it. Just to be clear, I never did, because I did have smart advisors who told me if you actually dare someone to steal it, you will be deemed soliciting a felony and you can be arrested.
Oh, wow.
So I love the fact that everyone thinks that I dared everyone, and I never once dare. I just said, I'm Todd Davis, CEO of LifeLock, and that's my real Social Security number, demonstrating my confidence in the service that we provide without ever actually soliciting a felony. So just so no one comes looking for me later, I never actually challenged anyone to steal my identity.
But it certainly worked. And what I loved about, obviously, you created a whole industry. You solved a huge need and a fear. That was, you tapped into this fear that people had and still have, actually, but you were way ahead, I think, way ahead of, this is almost pre-internet.
Yeah.
It's, and now, like, it's everywhere. So, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Over 3 million customers, I think.
Yeah. In fact, when we sold, we had over 4.5 million. We were doing almost 700 million a year in recurring revenue. So, but really what I was most proud of is that bit of education. So the challenge in an industry like that, or someone's in it, is it's terrible to sell with fear. Like, fear-based selling is not a good strategy. However, making people aware, reminding them, and then empowering them after. So what we really did was we'd show you kind of, hey, there's a black market. Hey, there's all this stuff. Hey, every 2 seconds, someone's having their identity stolen. But then we wanted to really reinforce that. So take back control. You do not have to be a victim here. And it was this empowering message that really helped us build the brand, right? And so allowing people to say, I didn't even know I could do something. Or I kind of thought I was protected with my credit card. Yeah, we had to evangelize. We had to remind you, you're not as safe as you think. Does your credit card protect your IRA, your retirement? Oh, no, it doesn't. Who's going to take care of that? But then we gave you the message. We are. Come on board, join us. And so, the idea of all these, by the end, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who weren't victims, or who we helped go take all the burden off. It's a pain trying to clean all that up. We became experts. So, the legacy that we leave, I've been gone for a couple of years now, but I was so proud of it. I was so proud of what we did for the employees who believed in us first.
Do you remember when I called you?
Yeah, go ahead and tell this story, good friend.
Okay, this is interesting. True story, too. Obviously, I've known Todd by this point a lot. We've been all over the world together. We played a lot of golf together. And I got hit personally. Yeah. I literally, I filed my taxes. This is probably going back to 2014 or 2015. And my tax accountant said, oh, you've already filed your taxes for e-filing. And, oh, by the way, there's refunds and they're not going to you. So I call up Todd and he's like, you're an idiot.
I go, well, you're a member, right? No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's how that started.
Wow.
So true story. And so really, I became a believer, obviously. But having gone through your system, it was super impressive. I will tell you, within a matter of, it took about 9 months. Yeah. But literally, and unfortunately or fortunately, there's like 3 different divisions at the IRS to have to deal with and kind of unwind all this. But I personally have my identity theft has been stolen multiple times since. Yeah. Once it's out there, I guess.
Well, that's the problem, right? Once I get your social security number, you can't cancel it like a credit card. So if I'm a criminal, I got a whole bunch of ways to turn it into money. Hey, I'll take it. I'll file a tax return. But by the way, I'll sell a copy of that social security number to any of my criminal friends that'll pay me for it. And then they can go do whatever they want with it. And then don't get me started on the IRS. That just, they're so backwards on, they give everyone who's already a victim a PIN number to use next time. So I want you to think about that for a second. So you've already been victimized. So you've already, this is like putting the tourniquet on, right? Okay, we'll stop it. Why don't you go give the PIN number to everyone who hasn't yet been compromised? Why don't we stop the profuse bleeding of $5 billion with a B, $5 billion a year that this government pays in fraudulent tax refunds that they rarely ever get back, right? But we go ahead and we only give the PIN numbers to people who have already been victimized, and so we know they're going to get hit again. Stop the bleeding. Who is running this thing?
Right. Well, by the way, that's another piece that I wanted to touch on, because it's kind of a social component too. You're helping people, and it's interesting as entrepreneurs. Sometimes I have friends like you. Some people are just out to make a lot of money, and you can do both. You can be socially responsible and make a lot of money. So you could talk a little. Can you talk a little bit about that and how important that is? Because I know that's what drives you.
Yeah. Well, twofold. One, I love truly the legacy we were going to leave. So when what I used to tell people that motivated me, when I started the company, the boys were literally newborns, weren't even one yet, my twin boys. And so I said, I want someday that my kids will say, when they say, what's your dad do? Well, he's retired now, but you used to hear about a crime called identity theft, but you really don't hear about it anymore. My dad helped beat it. Now that's a cool legacy versus, hey, my dad drives a Tesla and we got a nice house or whatever. I like, my dad helped beat, you don't even hear about it anymore, right? With pride. The other thing I will tell you that is incredibly gratifying on the legacy side is I believe my numbers were something like when we went public in 2012, we made over 100 millionaires that day. And by the way, we sold a few years later for 2.5 times what we had gone public for. And so these are people who were my literally frontline, were answering phones, were part of what we call member services, but that I even got challenged one time, I won't name names, but by one of our investors, why are you giving these people stock options? They don't even know what they are. And I used to tell them, you make a good point. The solution is not to keep them for ourselves then, is to go educate them that this is how you build wealth, right? This is how we're going to go change your life. And I don't mean a fun weekend in Vegas, 3-day weekend. I mean, send your kids to college that you're not sure how you would have paid for it before. How are you going to buy your first house? And so the pride I had in going public was knowing that these 100 people who really helped build it, I happened to get to be the face of the company. I got there first. I got the better job. But they really made the company, and now they got to reap in the rewards. That's not something that's going to be on newspapers. They're not going to, put that in my intro when they introduce me to speak somewhere. But it's actually one of the things I am absolutely the most proud of our legacy, besides just the social aspect of fighting the bad guys, literally. We were also changing people's lives who believed in the dream, who made it happen, who helped us accomplish that mission, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I know you're passionate about that. So let's wrap this up. But before we do, what for the listeners out there, what's one piece of advice that you would give every entrepreneur? Some of these folks are starting out. Some of them have been in the grind for a while, and some obviously are seasoned.
Yeah.
What would you say?
So first, if you can't, within 2 or 3 sentences, clearly articulate why whatever you're doing, whatever business you're in, whatever widget you're making, whatever service you're providing, if you cannot clearly articulate in 2 or 3 sentences how you are dramatically different, how you're disruptively different than the other competitors around you, you haven't figured it out yet. Don't say better service. Please don't say that. That can be a great way to keep customers. I'm a big believer in great service. But if that's your answer for why you're going to succeed, you haven't figured it out yet. Get back, get the work done, go figure out how to differentiate yourself significantly and be disruptive in the way that you do it.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd, buddy. You're the best.
Thanks, Ken.